Hi there, fellow 12 steppers. This is Don. I'm going to clear up a few questions about the 12 steps and about how long they should take and how long do you need to take to get through the 12 steps. And these 12 steps are easy. You can get through these 12 steps in one afternoon, no problem. You can do all 12 steps. And I'm here to show you, I'm not going to tell you that these 12 steps can be done in 4 hours or less. I'm going to show you. In fact, I'm going to show you how to do these 12 steps even without a big book. If you're a good sponsor, you should be able to take somebody through all 12 steps and not even have a big book in front of you. I think the last time, I think it was last weekend, I think 5-6 people went through the 12 steps, and I did the 12 step. I took somebody through the 12 steps. There was about 4 or 5 people there watching, but I was 1,000 miles away in a truck. And this is how I do it. I'm going to show you exactly how to do this. Not tell you that it can be done. I'm going to show you how it can be done. And so, step one, I'd say, turn your book to page 30. It says we learned that we had to concede to our innermost self that we were alcoholic. So then I just asked the people or the person or the prospect or, whoever wants to go through the 12 steps, we learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost self that we were alcoholic. This is the first step in recovery. So, and when they say yes, I say, do you know what alcoholic? Yes, I've been in AA for, 15 years. I got 2 weeks of sobriety, without a drink, so I say, okay, so you've been through the program, you know what alcoholic is. So according to the big book, according to the authors of the big book, Bill Wilson, the people that wrote the big book, there's no other way to do this step. You have completed step one. So this usually takes 3 to 5 minutes, then I say, okay, we're going to move on to step two. Congratulations. We go to step two. And step two, if you don't know this, it's on page 47. And on step two, it says, do you believe or even willing to believe that you're an alcoholic? Or do you believe or even willing to believe in a power greater than yourself? So I say, do you believe in a power greater than yourself? They say yes. Okay. Do you believe, so once they say yes, I don't even have to go there with, are you even willing to believe? So that takes us to step three. So, step three starts on page 60. So I reconfirm all this information. I say, you are convinced that you're an alcoholic. Oh yeah, I did this, that, and the other thing. Okay. And I say, are you convinced that there's a power greater than yourself? Oh, yes. Okay. So I'm convinced, they're convinced, so that takes us to step three. On step three, it starts on page 60, and I just highlight a few things in step three to be, because I'm taking them through the steps in a simplistic way. In step 10, we have to go back and grow an understanding and effectiveness behind these steps. So what I say, it says here on page 60, it says, any life run on self-will, any life could hardly be a success. And I say, you can see this, people coming to these 12-step programs, AA, NA, and they put down the drink, they put down the drug, and still their life is hardly a success. They're still suffering from anxiety. They're still suffering from depression. They're still, irritable, restless, and discontented. So, I say, so any life run, on self-will. And I know all this not from, I read it in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous or any of these other books. I know this from my own experience. So I say, do you understand this? They say, yeah. I say, well, in the third step, we got to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God, and let's talk. And then I say, let's talk about this a little bit. Then I go say, go to page 62, and it says on page 62, it says, we had to quit playing God. And that's what I had to do. That's what you're going to have to do. If playing God worked for you, you wouldn't be here with me this afternoon trying to straighten out your life by going through these 12 steps. And they pretty much, they get the message on that one, and it says here, we got to really look at this. It says, we're going to be agents of God. That means that we work for God. We're his agents. We're his representatives. And I go over that with them for a little while. And then, I go to page, one of my favorite pages in the book is the top of page 63, where it says, if we do these things, if remarkable things will happen. If we put ourselves in God's hands, remarkable things will happen. It says that right on. And God is our employer. So with God being the employer, and it says he's all powerful. Here's something else that you'll see on the top of page 63 that you don't hear a lot about in meetings. All I hear a lot in meetings is about I'm powerless. We're powerless. But on page 63, it says a new power flow in. Right? And it says, but we have to put away our little plans and designs, and so with that, you see a lot of people come into the program, into the 12 steps, and they have all their little plans and designs. It's their first week in AA, and they're gonna or NA or whatever 12-step program they're in. They're gonna go to college. They're gonna be a counselor. They're gonna join a gym. They're gonna post some stuff. Do things to, but they have all, get another job, change, but they have all their own little plans and designs, and it says, in the book that we need to put those to the side, and we need to be reborn. So I asked them, are you willing to go to work for God today? Will you carry this message? And when they say yes, I say, okay. Then the only way you can do this is in order to get through step 3, you have to say the 3rd step prayer. And because it says on page 87 that we memorize a few sets of prayers, I've done that. So God, I offer myself to thee to build with thee and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of bondage of self, so I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I'd help. Thy power, thy love, thy way of life, may I do thy will always. So I say the prayer with them, and a lot of times if there's a little bit of discussion, we may be into this first 3 steps, 15, 20 minutes, and then now starts step 4, so we go to the page and it says make a list, so we make a list on step 4. It says resentment is the number 1 offender. So I have a make, what it says is make a list. So I have a make a grudge list, and usually it's their the police or their brother, their mother, their father. They're pretty much their ex-employers. A lot of them, somebody that stole their bike in 2nd grade, exes, child support, on and on and on. All these things that make us resentful. Bad business deals in the past, or, all these things. So I have to make a list of, of all these things. Bang, 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 bang. And they can make this list pretty quick. A lot of times, this could be done in 10, 15 minutes. You have any resentments, anything that's keeping you up at night. When you wake up in the morning, you're thinking about these people. Oh, my roommate, or, people in the halfway, all kinds of stuff. So I have to make this list. Then I have to make a fears list, which usually is, I'm afraid I'm going to be homeless. I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job. I'm afraid I'm going to relapse. Blah, 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 blah. It's all the same. And then you have what's called the sex list, personal relationships. And most of these people that are on this list are in the resentment list. which that's, you can see how that goes. So I have him make this list. And I do there's boxes, and what was the cause, and what was, so I'll give you an example of how I do a fourth and fifth, and I do it all in the same sitting. You know what I mean? And sometimes if I know that I'm going to be, meeting with somebody and taking them through the steps, I'll say, make your resentment list. Think about this, make your list the night before. So a lot of times they'll already have their lists already done. So then I say, what was the first item on your list? They say, the police. We'll just use that as an example. That always crops up. If it's not the first, it's usually on there. What happened? Oh, I got arrested. They pulled me over for, my tail light, and the cop violated my rights, and he pulled me out of the car, and he said he smelled weed, but I don't smoke weed. But he found an ounce of cocaine under my seat. So and then and I don't judge anybody. I say, well, we're gonna have to look at this. Were you selling cocaine? Yes, I was selling cocaine. Okay. So we'll put down greed. You're trying to make money and acquire money in an illegal manner. And we're just looking for the nature of their wrongs. We're not saying the police were right or anything like that, but the nature of your wrongs. What could you have done to avoid this situation, or not get yourself in this situation in the future? And then I go over that with them. Well, maybe, if you didn't have an ounce of cocaine under your seat, you wouldn't have got arrested. You wouldn't have been on probation, and this way you wouldn't have a resentment again. None of this, your whole life would be totally different if you didn't make these decisions. If you were living this program of looking for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear throughout the day, none of this will happen in your life. So we don't have to make this same mistake going ahead in the future. But you are going to have to clean this up. And, and then I go on with their mother or their brother, and I basically point out the nature of the wrongs and which one of the deadly sins, played a part, or fear, or greed, or lust, or gluttony, or, and I feed it back into the 7 deadly sins. That usually takes, I'm going to say, depending on how much you discuss and, all these, of pointing out, because you're just pointing out the nature of their wrongs. The nature. I don't have to get into the whole, the 5th step is the nature. So they can see, okay, yeah, it was a little bit out of greed, so yeah, I wanted to make money, that wasn't mine. So we'll just crop that up as greed, don't make that same mistake in the future. And then I go over the when I get to fears, I usually go back to page 63, where, and I got all their fears there, and it says, once we face life successfully, we will lose fear of tomorrow, today, and the hereafter. And I say that's my experience, on the 3rd step, off of page 63. So then after that is cleaned up, and we've done that, now we'll say we're in an hour and a half, hour 45 minutes, we're into the steps. So now that takes us to page 76. Now, page 76, it says on page 76, do you want these things that we've been discussing, removed? Everything that's objectionable, right? So I say all these things that we've just discussed that are the 7 deadly sins: greed, lust, gluttony, anger. I can't name them off right now off the top of my head, but sloth, And so with these, I ask them, do you want these things that remove these things, all these things that you thought were going to bring you pleasure, but ended up bringing you pain? The fact that you're going to make some extra money with these selling these drugs. The fact that, you were married, but you saw this girl and, you fell into lust, and all this gluttonous behavior and all this, stuff. And I say all these things that you thought were going to bring you pleasure that ended up bringing you pain. Do you want them removed? They say yes. Okay. That brings us to the 7th step. That's it on the 6th step. There's no more. There's no, nothing else. So, and if you can find a different way to do these steps that aren't in this book, and you've been successful at it, please, leave me a comment and let me know. Then that brings us to the 7th step. So, 7th step, my Creator, I'm now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you remove from me every single defective character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and to my fellows. Grant me the strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. So now, there's no other way to do the step. The step 7, it says, step 7, say this prayer. You say the prayer, the step 7 is done. Of course, you're going to go back and grow in understanding and see in step 7, as says, my Creator, I'm now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you remove from me every single defective character. So that stands in the way of my usefulness to you and to my fellows. So stands in the way of my usefulness. So if that, something might be, you might want something or think you have this defect, and it might be standing in the way of what you want, but it's not standing in the way which makes you effective to God and to the people about you. So I go over a little prayer with them. And, of course, you go through these steps and then you practice them for a lifetime. So after that, step 6, 7, 8, and the start of 9 are all on the same page 76. So what I do is I ask them, was there anybody on your resentment list that is not, because it says we have a list, and then so I ask him, is there anybody on your resentment list that is not, that did you harm anybody that's not on your resentment list? This is step 8. We made a list of people we have harmed. Well, yeah, my Home Depot is not on my resentment list, but I stole from them. So, okay, write that down. So I have them, write down some things that come to their mind, that things, people or institutions that they had harmed that aren't on the list. So then what I do is after they've made their list, and I say keep that list with you, and if anything crops up, you think of something, along the way you're driving along in your car, whoa, I did that person dirty, write them on your list. Okay, so now you got your list there. Now comes the 9th step. So in the 9th step, now it's time to make amends. So this isn't time to, fold everything down and say, let's go make amends and get back with me in 6 weeks, after you've made a few amends. That's not what the book says. And I say, we're going to work on these amends, or we're not going to work on them. God is going to work on them. But what we're going to, it says on page 77 that we need to clean this stuff up so we can be of maximum usefulness to God and to the people about us. And then it says, I don't know if I can memorize this because usually the person on the other side has the book, but it says, if we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we'll be amazed before we are halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past. We will not shut the door on the. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we'll be amazed before we are halfway through. We will not regret the past. Anyway, I can't. I'm getting confused now in my brain, but anyway. Then you say the promises. Then we read the promises, and then from there, this thought brings us to step 10. So I don't tell them to go away and come back to me in 6 weeks. This thought brings us to step 10. And the reason that we need to do this is because the first 9 steps are to clean up your past. So we can see where we made our mistakes. We have our list of people that we harmed. We have another list that's, where we can see where, and usually when people can see the nature of their wrongs, like, my mother, they come up with something. My mother threw me out of the house because I was drinking, and I'm resentful at her because I'm homeless. They can usually see where they were wrong, which means when you admit that you're wrong, that you might owe the other person an amends. So then, it says, so we're cleaning up the past. Now it says in the book on page 84, it says we vigorously commenced this way of living as we cleaned up the past. So I say circle as, because so now you have the 9th step is this stuff behind you. Now, the 10th step is going into your life, into the future. You're starting a new life today. So in that life into the new future, we want to be careful not to make any new mistakes. How do we do this? It says we vigorously commence this way of living. And it says we watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. Now, if you pick a sponsor and you ask them, what do you watch for throughout the day? If they can't tell you selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear, obviously this person is not vigorously commencing this way of living. They're just shooting from the hip. They may say in the meeting that they're living the AA program or they're living the 12 steps, but if you don't know what to watch for, and it says when these things crop up throughout the day, when these things crop up throughout the day, we ask God to remove them. I do that by saying the 7-step prayer when they crop up. It says in the book we ask God, and we turn our thoughts to, so I always turn my thoughts to somebody that I could help, or I'm always thinking about different ways to carry the message. And Dr. Bob took 5,000 people through the steps in 15 years. I'm shooting for 50,000 plus. And I think through videos and some of these other creative ways I'm coming up with, I'm going to be able to do that easily. So with that, it also says in the 10th step that we have to cease fighting everyone and everything, even alcohol. So what I do is I tell them a little story, and the story's about a Chinese, it's an old Chinese proverb. I really like it, and it is about, the way life turns out and things. So I tell them, in step 10, so step 10 is a lot more than just, when I'm wrong, I apologize. This is, drilling down on selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. The way I memorized that when I was new, to the 12 steps is I said, San Diego is real fun. So San Diego, the S is selfishness. The D is dishonesty, and Diego is, then you have R is resentment, and F is fun. So now, and I tell them this Chinese proverb about there's an old Chinese guy, and all he does is he loves his son, and with that, I tell him, there was the old Chinese guy, and his business burned down, and all the villagers came up and said, oh, this is the worst thing that ever happened. Your business burned down. And he said, this could be good, this could be bad, just like the 7-step prayer. My Creator, I'm now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. Because we don't know what's good. We don't know what's bad. We're in God's will. We're in God's hands. We don't have to be concerned. We don't have to have anxiety things aren't going our way. Or we don't have to be depressed because God has a plan already. And so he just wants his son. And his business burns down. All the villagers say this is a bad thing. He takes a job as a lowly sharecropper. And in that, as a sharecropper, it's the lowest of the low. He was a big blacksmith. Now he's a lowly sharecropper. And the villagers say, oh, this is the worst thing. Now you're a lowly sharecropper. He said, this could be good. This could be bad. They're like, how could this be good that you were a blacksmith? Now you're a sharecropper. And so what happens is his old horse dies. He sends his son out to retrieve the horse. So once he retrieves the horse, 100 Mustangs follow him back. And they all the villagers say, the richest man in the land, this is the greatest thing. Well, he could be good, but could be bad. Well, how could being the richest man be bad? Well, his son goes out to break in one of those horses, and his son that he loves breaks his back. And he loves his son, but he still has his son, and the villagers are going, this is bad. Now your son has broke his back, and, he's crippled, and, he's never going to be of any, use to you. And he says, I just love my son. I just want my son. So 2 days later, a bunch of soldiers come through the village, and they take all the healthy men to war. And all those healthy men, they all got slaughtered in the war. So if his building hadn't burned down, and he hadn't taken the job as a sharecropper, and he hadn't brought back the Mustangs, and his son would have died. So, the moral of the story is, a lot of these things in life that we think are good, like you meet somebody, oh, we're getting married, and everything's happening, got a new job, and all these things, and then 5 years later, it's all falling apart. So, and then something that you thought that was a good thing at the time, and then something, but now it's bringing you pain, and something that you thought was a bad thing at the time, now is, maybe doing alcohol or whatever you were doing, or you got arrested and it brought you a lot of pain then, but, now you're sober, you cleaned up your life, and, things are better, and now you can look back and say, wow, that was a life-changing experience. So, and then it goes, we can't rest on our laurels in this. So in step 10, and there's a lot of stuff in step 10 on page 84, 85. You can go through that, and it says, we develop a sixth sense when we're living this, when we're vigorously commencing this way. So then I just say, okay, now we're going to start step 11. That in step 10, you're supposed to be looking for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear, right? So then in step 11, it says on page 86 that on awakening, let us think about the next 24 hours ahead. Before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking, especially if it be divorced from self-pity, dishonesty, and self-seeking motives. Then it goes on to say this will change our thought life, and it'll change our thinking of wrong motives. So this is why I do all the steps in one day, because as we clean up the past, it says it right in the book. So we want to be, as we're cleaning up those resentments, and as we're cleaning up those whatever we got, fines or financial amends, as we're cleaning that up, we want to be careful going into our new life and not making any new mistakes. So when I wake up in the morning, like I said, I ask God to direct my thinking, especially if it be divorced from self-pity, dishonesty, and self-seeking motives. And this puts our thought life on a much higher plane and clears our thinking of wrong motives, right? So once your thinking is cleared of wrong motives, and you're doing this for a while, Bill Wilson even says in the 12 and 12, once we're on the AA beam and our thinking is cleared of wrong motives, now we can go back and make these amends, without a motive, And you see it all the time, and, people run through the first 8 steps, they get down to 9, their sponsor tells them, go out, they want to make an amends to an ex-girlfriend that they want to get back together with, they want to make amends to their mother so they can get back in her house, so none of these amends, in my opinion, are done without a motive. A motive is, you go and tell somebody, I did this, and I owe you $100. I took your DVD player out of your car, or something, your neighbor or something. So I wake up in the morning and I ask God to direct my thinking, and then it says and thinking about our day. So this lets you know on awakening, and you wake up and you ask God to direct your thinking. Now you're thinking about your day. You're planning out the next 24 hours ahead. So I usually day, and a lot of times, what I do with this is when I'm planning out my day is I think about where it says on another page, it says we ask God what we can do each day for the man who is still sick. So we make videos, we go to meetings, take people through the steps, all these different things. You're thinking about your day, and then what I do is when I'm done thinking about my day, I say a prayer, because I know meditation is thinking about your day. How do I know this? Because it says in the book, on awakening, let us think about the next 24 hours ahead. On the next page, at the top of page 86, it says, when we are done with our meditation, we say a prayer. So I don't wake up and pray. What I do is I wake up and I ask God to direct my thinking. And it says, and it gives specific instructions on page 87. About the specific instructions are, looking to see where religious people are right, memorizing a few sets of prayers, and a few other things. And it says if we do this, our life will, our thinking will be a much less danger, like it says on page 88, of our thinking will be put, it's much less danger of foolish thinking, and it says we let God discipline us. So then I explain to him the first part of step 11. Then I say, when you're done with this in the morning, when you go out in the day, you watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. And then there's one more thing you do every day, is at night, you do a nightly review, and that's at the top of page 86. So at the top of page 86, it says, when we retire at night, were we selfish? Were we dishonest? Your selfishness, dishonesty, were we resentful? We have fear, and so we do we answer those questions. I usually call somebody or somebody I just taken through the steps, and I call them and say, okay, we're going to do a nightly review, and we answer these questions. Were you kind and loving at all? Could you have done better? We discuss our day, and then we come up with a little plan of what we can do better tomorrow. And once I explain all this to them, I say, call me, it says on page 84 that we grow in understanding and effectiveness. So you're going to need to grow in understanding and effectiveness of what we just have done. You're going to need to go with people and help people get through the steps. And then, when you get to a certain point, you're going to be ready to take people through the steps on your own. So basically I tell them to call me every night for at least a week, to check in and do a nightly review, and then a lot of times they'll say, when we did my fourth step, or my fifth step, I forgot to tell you. So in the nightly review, that resentment will crop up, and I say, okay, let's take care of that right now. So usually throughout that week, they got a good handle on their resentments, they know their routine, and then I say, congratulations, you've completed the 12 steps. And it says on page 89, it says, nothing ensures us more from a drink than intensive work from other alcoholics. So I explained to him, intensive work with other alcoholics is taking somebody and taking them through the 12 steps. It's not, here's my phone number, read the doctor's opinion for 90 days. And if you're still around, I'll start working with you. We'll start talking about step 1. That's not why this program was wildly successful in the very beginning in 1943. This program was successful because it had a 97% recovery rate, because the people did the steps all in one day. It wasn't until 1943, this is where I believe the whole downturn of the whole thing, and the collapsing of the 12 steps, and was around 1943. There was a group that took what Clarence Schneider was doing in Cleveland, and they took it to DC, and they broke it up into four groups, 1 hour, but they were taking 30 days to take people through the steps. And then a lot of people got lost in translation. They didn't get it, and they didn't get the intensive work. They didn't get the intensity of these 12 steps. And then fast forward 80 years, you're looking at, in a lot of places the success rate is down to 2 to 3%, and if you go to any rehab, they'll tell you, the success rate, you people going through our program, you have about a 1 to 2% chance. So, this is how. So usually about this time, I'm into 2, 3, 4 hours, of taking, somebody through the steps, and then I say call me at night, and that's how you do it. Now, I did all this from memory because I've taken so many people through the steps. I can just